One of the biggest differences I notice between experienced investors and inexperienced investors isn't the lack of knowledge, it's their process. Most people looking at property deals don't actually have a structured way of analysing them. They'll look at the rent, scroll through Rightmove, maybe calculate a yield or two, and then try to make a decision based on instinct. And honestly, that's usually where problems start, because property deals rarely look bad at the beginning. In fact, most bad deals look completely reasonable on the surface. That's why I eventually built myself a proper deal checklist. Not because I wanted to overcomplicate things, because I realised I was seeing the same mistakes happen again and again. People missing obvious costs or forgetting operational issues, ignoring risk and getting emotionally attached to deals, or convincing themselves something works because they want it to work. The reality is, once money is committed, those mistakes become expensive very quickly. So now, every single property deal I look at goes through the same process. And honestly, having structure around deal analysis has probably saved me more money than finding great deals ever has. Now, I know the core toolkit is digital, but I still print mine out and keep it in a folder, partly because I prefer physically working through deals, but also because I think slowing yourself down slightly leads to better decisions. When investors move too quickly, emotions start taking over. A property can look nice, the estate agent can sound convincing, the rental figures start to seem attractive, and people start analysing the deal emotionally instead of objectively. Whereas when you physically sit down and work through a proper checklist, you start spotting things that you would normally miss. For example, one thing I always check early now is whether the income is actually realistic. Not the estate agent's version of the income that's posted online, not realistic income. What would this property actually produce consistently once all the real world costs are accounted for? Because I've seen so many deals where the headline rent looked attractive, but once you factor in voids, maintenance, management, and finance costs, the deal became very average very quickly. And most investors don't discover that until they've already completed. Another thing I always work through is operational complexity. This is something newer investors massively underestimate. There's a huge difference between owning one straightforward single let and managing a high turnover HMO with licensing requirements and multiple tenants. Yet, on a spreadsheet, these two deals can look very similar. So one of the things inside the toolkit, which is a real proper operational assessment section, because I think investors need to understand what they are actually buying into day to day, not just what the numbers say. Then there's the risk side. This is probably the section I spend the most time on personally, because property investing is not about assuming everything goes perfectly. It's about understanding what happens when things don't. What happens if interest rates increase? What happens if the property sits empty? What happens if maintenance costs spike? What happens if regulation changes? A lot of investors analyse deals based on ideal conditions, but strong investments are usually the ones that still perform reasonably well under pressure. Finally, I always think carefully about exit, because eventually every investor exits something, and the buyer pool matters far more than people realise. A standard family house gives you flexibility. Certain HMOs, flats, or highly specialised properties can narrow your options significantly. So I want to understand early on how easy this property is likely to be to refinance, hold, or sell later on. And honestly, the biggest thing that the toolkit helps with is consistency. That's probably the real value. Because once investors become more structured in how they analyse deals, they usually become more confident in their decisions as well. And confidence in property investing doesn't usually come from motivation alone, it comes from clarity. If you want the full checklist, templates, and frameworks I personally use when analysing deals, they're all inside the core toolkit. And if you're still learning how to properly assess deals, I honestly think having some kind of structured processes is one of the best things you can build early on.